This thing's a mouthful. It's the Hi-Lux Pentalux TAC VFG2 4 to 20 by 50. This thing's beefy. Hey guys, welcome back to Thinking Shooter. If you would, hit that subscribe button, hit the share button, leave a comment, all that good stuff, please. It helps the channel grow, helps get this content out to more viewers. No shout out for the drink of the evening for last video. No one guessed what I was drinking, but I was drinking some peach brandy. It was Paul Masson, but yeah, I love peach brandy. And then tonight's drink of the evening, I'll let you get a good look at that one. It should, if you're familiar with the drink, you should be able to get it. It's a pretty easy one. It's very refreshing. So, as always, guys, don't forget about the t-shirt giveaway for the Big Tex Ordnance t-shirt. Yeah, as always, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment on all 5 scope review videos, and the winner will be picked 1 week after the 5th video is posted, so don't forget about that. Let's get into this, alright? We got the Hi-Lux Optics Pentalux TAC, as in TAC, VF, as in Victor Fox, G2, 4 to 20 by 50. So, this thing, currently, as of the recording of this video, MSRP is for $575. It is a first focal plane mil-radian reticle and has a 30mm tube. My first impressions on it, the packaging, it was actually really nice packaging. So it came in this big cardboard box, and it had a plastic sleeve that the box slipped into. And on the inside, the optic itself sat inside of a sealed plastic sleeve, wrapping, whatever, where the whole optic was in it, and they had air in it, and they sealed it, and then it sat inside, fully encased in closed cell foam. But included was a CR2032 battery that this thing takes for the illumination. It came with a lens cloth, a throw lever, and a manual, and last, something that I thought was pretty cool, is screw-on flip covers. So they're magnetic. So they flip up, and then whenever you push them down, it's got, I don't know if you can see it here, probably not. Right here on this tab, and up here on the mating tab, finger's not wanting to work. There's a magnet that catches it and allows it to close. Same thing on the ocular end. So, thought that was cool, and they screw on. Here, I'll do this one. But yeah, instead of slipping on like most lens covers, it actually threads on to the to both ends, the objective and the ocular end. So that's pretty cool. And where it screws on, it actually lines up on the top. So, pretty nifty. The appearance of it is attractive. It's a very nice looking scope, very sturdy and beefy looking. It's big, it's heavy, but it has a very nice matte anodizing to it. As far as the turrets go, I mean, goodness, look at these things. These things are monsters. It's got some ginormous turrets on it, but they're very easy to read. There is no zero stop or elevation graduation indicator, but I will give this one a pass because there's only 2 complete revolutions that you can make with the turret. So, though it'd be nice to have a zero stop, not really a big deal because you can always dial down and then just back up one as long as you're either, in the first, second, or third rev. So it's not really a big detractor. It would take some getting used to. The turret adjustments, though, they're very, listen to that. Very positive. Tactile. You can feel each movement. You can obviously hear them. Everything lines up. There's 2 rows of numbers here. So you've got your bottom row, and then you got your top row to help you stay, tuned in to where you're at. So it's got 12 mils per revolution. So once you make one complete rev, that's 12 mils. And then you make another complete rev, and you're maxed out. So you're not going to get lost really. Goodness, these are loud. Yeah, so if you like loud and tactile, this is your thing. And the windage one, it's got one row that dials to 6. If you go this way, that's 6, or if you go this way, that's 6. Now you can go past it and do it again, but it's got a 6 right in between. But you really shouldn't be needing to dial more than 6 mils, holy hell, of windage. If you have to dial 6 mils of wind, please let me know what you are shooting at and at what distance. But yeah, it's just as loud, just as positive, just as tactile, all that good stuff. So there is a little bit of slop, but it's not bad. It kind of wiggles back and forth between, or probably about a total of 0.1 mil that it might have a little bit of wiggle. But when it moves, it does move. There's no question to it. And it does line up. So it does that on both the windage and the elevation. Moving on, the ocular adjustments, really good. They are the diopter and the parallax work really good together. Didn't have any issues. And I thought it was cool because the diopter actually has a diopter graduation marking system thing on it. So you can actually see what you're actually dialed to. Let me see if I can get this to show up here. So right here, it's kind of hard to see because my camera's being a goober, but right here is graduations, and it's got it on like 3 different spots, so you can see where your diopter setting is at. So if you want to take note of that, that's pretty cool. It's very smooth. I guess it's a touch looser than I would prefer it to be, but it's not really too big of a deal. Like, I really don't think it's going to accidentally get knocked off. Either way, it's pretty cool. The image quality on it is, it's about middle of the road. It's not bad. It's not the best. It's definitely, it's not quite up there with, like Night Force or anything, but it's got some pretty good, it's got good glass, or decent glass in it anyway. It's definitely usable. Magnification, very smooth, no jumping, binding, bumping, clunking, anything like that. It's just smooth. No issues. Like, the reticle doesn't skip or jump or anything when you're zooming in. The glass, like I said, it's decent, very clear. It's kind of hard to come across any optic, even in the cheaper ones these days, that the glass isn't at least clear. But there's no hazing. There's a touch of chromatic aberration, but it's not terrible. The biggest issues with this thing so far is it has a small eye box and it does have distortion, but it's not quite to the point of unusability. So going through my first impressions, I was like, oh, that's kind of, I can definitely see that. Like, just looking at it in my kitchen, if you put it at a wall, you can actually see the image curves. That's what distortion is when you have curvature in your image. And then the eye box, when you're looking through, if you've looked through a lot of different scopes, you'll see some scopes where you look through and the image is huge. It's super clear. You don't see anything but the image. And then some optics you look through and it's kind of like looking through a tube where, you can see your image and it's obviously magnified, but you can see black on the inside where you're seeing the inside of the scope tube. That's your eye box, basically. It's got a smaller eye box to it. Again, it's kind of annoying, but it doesn't really detract from shootability. Now, moving on to the reticle. This is by far the best feature of the entire optic. It is simple. It is, if you have done any type of long range shooting and used any type of mil-radian reticle, it is just that. It is very simple. It's just simple crosshair. In fact, I'll put a picture up so you can see it. But it's just a simple design. It's numbered in evens going down. It has 1 mil hashes with 0.5 mil spaces on the vertical, so going up and down. And then on the windage, it has 1 mil hashes with 0.2 mil dashes going on the horizontal to it. So again, if you look, as soon as you start from the center, it goes 0.2, And then once you get out to 8 mils on the side, it goes to, I think, full 10th mils for your hashes or dashes, whatever I called them. Going into the pre-fire thoughts, the biggest thing I was concerned about, because again, this was my initial impressions. This is before I shot it. I was kind of curious how much the distortion and the eye box size were going to affect the shootability of it. I didn't really think it would affect it that much, because it really, eye box and distortion don't generally affect the shootability. It just it's a, I guess, kind of a comfort thing. It's one of those, it's nice to not have that because it's less distracting. You can most definitely shoot any optic that has distortion and smaller eye boxes. It's just at that point it's a comfort and a distraction issue. So getting into the actual shooting of it, again, I'm using the same bolt gun that was previously described. I mechanically zeroed it, and then I actually zeroed it by shooting, and I didn't have any issues. Everything lined up, responded well to my adjustments. It was just standard, 3-shot group, made correction, another 3-shot, made a correction. And then when I got to the actual testing of it by shooting, I did the box test that I've, done on the previous optics. Everything worked as expected. Everything responded accordingly. No issues, tracked great. And then I shot out to distances of 100 to 800 yards at a 10-inch plate. Yeah, it worked good. Due to the small eye box and the distortion, 500 yards was about as far as I could comfortably hold before I switched over to dialing. But once I started dialing, I didn't have any issue getting on at 800. Like I said, it's just whenever you start getting out towards the edges, when you have smaller eye boxes and when you have some distortion, it kind of gets annoying because it starts, I guess, curving how how you view the image, so you may not be 100% lined up on target when you're trying to hold. So then we get into the torture testing. Again, torture test, it was just test optic durability, kind of put it through its limits or see what its limits were. And it was all about reasonable tests that I found reasonable, and the objective was not to break the optic. Getting into the drop test. The first drop, there was a shift in zero, but it didn't affect tracking. It knocked it. The elevation jumped probably a good 0.3 mils, but it didn't seem to affect the tracking of it because it still responded. It still, whenever I said move, 0.9 mils, it moved 0.9 mils. It just caused the optic to shift. It moved the erector assembly inside the tube. And then drop 2, and the first one was on the elevation. The second one, where I dropped it on the windage, and there was a shift in zero, but it, again, didn't affect the tracking at all. It moved the windage a good probably 0.3 or 4 mils. And I noticed that the turret had actually bumped off and was sitting at like 0.1 or 0.2 mils. So I just moved it back to 0 and then tried the tracking on it, and it seemed to track fine. I didn't have any issues with it holding. And then final one was on the parallax. And again, there was another relatively big shift in zero, but it didn't affect the ability to actually track. So this is kind of a standard thing that you would actually find in a lot of optics, where you may have a bit of a shift if it takes some type of impact, but it will still be able to track. You'll just have to re-zero if it takes some kind of, decent impact to it. So keep that in mind. So the water tests. First test, again, was running water. Second was full submerge. Running water, no water in the tube, no issue in zero, no effect on tracking. Same thing with the submerge. I fully submerged the optic for a minute, pulled it out, no water in the tube, no shift in zero, no effect on tracking. All right, moving on to the heat. So, again, put it in the oven, 170 degrees, 10 minutes, no shift in zero, no effect on tracking, nothing felt gummy or sticky or weird. Because of the size of this thing, it took probably a good 5 to 7 minutes to cool down enough that I could actually, handle it, hold it. This thing, it's a beefcake here. Now, the cold test, like most optics, the adjustments were stiff, but they smoothed out after the optic warmed up. There was no shift in zero, no effect on tracking, but I could barely see through the optic. It was pretty foggy and hazy inside the optic. It fogged across the entire diameter of the lens, and while looking through it, like, I could barely see through it. I couldn't even really make out my reticle, and I was like, if I had to use it, I don't know that I could comfortably make a shot with this thing if I absolutely had to. But I let it sit for a little bit. About 5 minutes passed, and the fogging greatly reduced, and I could actually see rather well through. I mean, it wasn't as clear as it was, but I could actually see rather decently through the optic, and I could actually make out my reticle. And then after about 10 minutes of sitting, the fogging was completely gone. It was back to before I even put it in the freezer. So it did return to its natural state, if you will. It did pretty good. So my final thoughts. I actually thought it was very impressive. Obviously it had its flaws, but for the price, it actually performed very well. It was exceeding in some areas, like the tactileness of the turrets were very, very responsive. And they're loud. Not that loud is a good thing when you're trying to be a sniper, but it was very audible. It was very tactile. And that's something that even some of the higher end optics, they sometimes don't do, or it's not as prominent. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm paying this much for this optic, and you can't give me like turrets that I can actually tell I made an adjustment. It tracked very well. Even being knocked off zero, it still maintained its ability to track. You just have to keep in mind, if you do take a big bump, you're gonna have to re-zero it. Like I said, there was a noticeable amount of distortion or curvature in your image, and there's a little bit of chromatic aberration, but not a big deal, especially for the price of it. And it did have a small eye box. Again, it was more of just a kind of annoyance thing. It didn't detract from the shootability of it. It's just a nitpicking. It's very durable. Like I said, aside from it bumping and knocking off, like, I didn't have any issues at all with any of the other tests. It just had a shift in zero. Again, pretty common. I really do feel that this thing is at a relatively fair price. I wouldn't mind seeing it closer to low fives, but again, just kind of nitpicking. It really, for what you're getting and for the price of it, this is probably the most reasonably priced optic that I've shown you guys up to this point. It really is a decently priced optic. Again, it's got its flaws. It's got its things to watch out for, but I wouldn't hesitate using this thing at all. Just make sure you're aware of, the things to look out for. So again, I sent out my my write-up to the company, and they wrote back and they said that thank you. It was a very detailed write-up. It was very thorough, and it provided a lot of useful data. They had a couple questions on how I conducted the drop test, which I explained and told them, why and what exactly I did and everything. They said if the scope pitches or yaws at any angle on the drop, it may not result in a perpendicular impact on the turret shaft. Meaning, if it hit slightly off, it could cause it to bump instead of it being a direct impact. They said the point of impact shift that I found was basically probably due to the design of the turret. The turret shaft is exposed under the turret marking cap. So this piece right here where you can see the numbers and whatnot, they said there's no zero stop housing or gearing or shroud to protect the turret shaft. So that was probably, partly why it had that shift, because there wasn't anything really there to protect it. But cool thing, they said that the TAC VF, this thing, was released in 2017, and since then they've gathered a lot of feedback for improvements, and they are adding all of that feedback into their new scope, the PR5, which will be a 5 to 25 by 56 millimeter objective lens. They said it will have a zero stop. It will have stainless steel internals. It'll have stiffer springs, higher grade ED glass. Oh, goodness, words. And it will have a apochromatic triplet design, which basically it will reduce the chromatic aberration and distortion. And it will also have a Christmas tree style reticle. They are looking at coming out with this thing around mid-summer of this year, 2022. And I do not have an MSRP for you guys yet. So when I find that out, I will let you guys know what I think and the price and everything of it. But in closing, guys, don't forget about the Big Tech's Ordnance t-shirt giveaway. Again, you must be subscribed, like, and comment on all 5 scope review videos, and I will pick a winner 1 week after the 5th video goes up. Again, even if you don't want the shirt, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. Doesn't cost anything. It's free. Helps the channel out. Spreads the word. Gets the news and info out there to everyone. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts on this or just anything? What would you guys like to see in the future? Also, hit me up on Instagram, The Thinking Shooter. Head over there. I post the little thing on Instagram, letting everyone on Instagram know that a new video is up. So if for some reason you're having issues with post notifications, you can find out on Instagram. So make sure to hit me up there. I will try to be more active. I have a very hard time with Instagram because I suck with social media. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope everything made sense. Again, like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Other than that, make it make sense, guys. Later.